today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about
the 6 biggest traps that strip men of their confidence, leadership, and masculinity. You're doing everything you thought was right as a husband and a partner, but your marriage is falling apart. You feel like you can't win. And the problem is that the more he makes it better, the more he has to provide, right? This is the danger of becoming the stoic provider. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we're talking about the masculinity trap, how men lose themselves in the modern world. You're doing everything you thought was right as a husband and a partner, but your marriage is falling apart. You feel like you can't win. You're either too passive, too aggressive, or just not enough in some way. Well, the truth is that many men fall into common, predictable traps that slowly kill their masculinity and their relationship. But once you recognize these patterns, you can break free and reclaim your confidence, strength, and leadership. And that's what we're talking about today, fellas. And ladies, if you're listening, we're talking about the patterns and how to break free so that you can start to have a separate but equal relationship that works for you and your partner, and honestly, for your whole family, right? This is the difference between keeping your family and losing your family. This is the difference between being a roommate and being a partner. This is what it's all about here. So you're bending over backwards to make your wife happy, or you're trying to stay strong by shutting down your emotions, but nothing is working. Well, the modern world has changed the rules, and many men are playing a losing game. It's time to recognize the traps so you can escape them. And by traps, we mean strategies for making relationships work that just aren't effective. And they're not effective because they're not in tune with your innate sense of manhood, your innate sense of masculinity. I don't mean something conscious necessarily, something that you feel. There's all kinds of strategies that we've come up with to adjust to the change in how masculinity is expressed in our society today. All kinds of strategies that are driven by what we hope is going to work, by what we think our wives want from us. But these are not strategies based in our innate strengths. They're strategies based on misperceptions about what it means to be a man. One of the misperceptions is that men and women are the same. Men and women are equal, but not the same. And we've talked about that a lot in the Richer Relationship podcast here. But that base belief is what drives a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So the most common maladaptive male roles, I'm going to list the names and then tell you a little bit about each of them, and then we're going to go deep. There's the nice guy syndrome. There's toxic masculinity. There's the over-avoidant overachiever. There's the stoic provider, the passive-aggressive partner, and the defensive reactor. These are all different strategies or behavior patterns that men have adopted in the hope that they can be more successful as partners, more successful in life. The nice guy syndrome is the chronic people pleaser, saying yes to their wife to avoid conflict, but he kind of loses his sense of self in the process. The only place where maybe he finds expression of himself is when he goes out with the fellas. But at home, he kind of loses that. There's a conflict between who he experiences himself as individually and who he experiences himself as in the marriage. Or he might be so nice that he's nice everywhere, in which case he's really shut down and frustrated emotionally in some ways. Toxic masculinity, that's as the overcompensator. This is, I'm done with having my masculinity repressed. I'm going to dominate. I'm going to be in charge. I'm going to maintain a sense of power that is not real in this context. It might have been real in 1924 or before that, but it ain't real anymore. There's the avoidant overachiever, the man who buries himself in work and sometimes hobbies. The excuse is, I need to accomplish, I need to provide. The only thing I can do now is provide. Since protection is provided by the police and the military, Since service, we pay other people to serve. All I can do is provide, provide, provide. So I'm going to overachieve. I'm going to be the CEO. I'm going to be the best at whatever I do. But that man slowly withdraws from the relationship itself and even from his children, and then wonders why his family pulls away from him. There's the stoic provider. This is the guy who isn't achieving so much, but he's focused on work, on doing his job. He might be going to a 9 to 5 job, putting money away in the 401k and hoping that he's going to get to retire one day. He and his wife are doing their best to make sure that everything goes well for the kids. But again, he's so focused on checking the boxes of provision that he misses it at home. There's the passive aggressive partner. This is the man who bottles up his frustration and it leaks out sideways, comes out through sarcasm, withdrawal, resentment. And there's the defensive reactor. This is the man who every time he feels criticism responds with anger or overreaction instead of listening and growing. And truthfully, fellas, we can all be mixes of these things, right? These are qualities that all men can have. It's not like you can point the finger and say, he's got that, I don't. We all have some of this going on to some extent. We've played with these strategies, hoping that in some way it's going to work. And we land on one that feels like it's a better fit for who we are and sort of stick there. It's a lot like love languages, right? Everyone has the same 5 love languages, but 1 or 2 of them are on the top. And the love language is going to change contextually depending on the circumstances. In crisis, you're going to have a different love language that needs to be met. This is a lot like that. Only they're negative qualities. Love languages are positive. It's where we feel nurtured. If you want to learn more about love languages, go to just Google love languages, 5 love languages, and you'll find a free love language test out there. We've done many podcasts on this in case you don't know what a love language is. But these strategies, they're strategies that are within all men. And there are different reasons for each of them. And now we're going to talk about them in depth so that you can explore how much of each you may or may not have. Which maladaptive behaviors are you engaging in? And you might be engaging in different maladaptive behaviors in different environments. So your wife resents you, you feel misunderstood, and you don't even know how you got there. Once you understand how these maladaptive behaviors play out, you can start to make changes. You can start to make changes that feel natural and effective, that come from a place of your innate strength. Reclaiming your strength without fear is the trick here. Okay, so let's break these things down step by step. The first thing we talked about is nice guy syndrome. The nice guy is the guy who is we said chronic people pleaser, but that's not completely accurate. These are men who are very attuned and attentive to the emotional needs of their wives, but they don't completely understand what's driving them. That's probably the best way to put it. And so their wife says that they're looking for a guy who's more this, and so they show up as more this. Or their wife says they want them to be more that, and so they show up as more that. They start to lead in their marriage, and their wife criticizes them as being manipulative, and so they do their best to not be manipulative, whatever that might mean. And eventually, they just end up being yes men. The expression happy life, happy wife, that is, if you took that to its extreme, that would be nice guy syndrome. It's the guy who's always trying to please his wife. He's bending over backwards trying to please her. And no matter what he does, it's wrong. And we've all done this. We've all been there. And these are guys who will almost never say no. They might say yes. They'll definitely say yes. They might say maybe, or maybe is going to be heard as a yes. And sometimes they'll say yes and not do it. And then their explanation is going to be, oh, you're right. I'm so defective. I'm going to work on that. Right. So these are guys who have taken on the trappings of the talk therapy world. In the talk therapy world, what we're seeking to do is understand our behaviors and work on them. Oh, yes, honey, I'm working on that. Oh, yes. You know what? I can tell you why I did that. I did that because of the way I was raised, my mom, my dad, and I'm working on that. And I hope that you understand. All right. This is a very feminine way of communicating, but It's a feminine way of doing. It's not a feminine way of being, the way the nice guy uses it. The nice guy uses this as a protection. Um, and very often the nice guy is acting out their masculine need, their need to feel like they can protect themselves and their family by taking these attitudes other places. Maybe they're going to a bar and watching football with their fellas. Maybe they're reliving their college dreams. Maybe they're cheating. Maybe they found a woman where they feel safe enough to not be a nice guy. Nice guy syndrome is a lose-lose strategy because, first of all, your wife really does want you to understand, not pretend you understand. Second of all, your wife really does want you to disagree with her, right? The key to the nice guy syndrome is there's almost never disagreement. You're always acting as if you're in agreement. Emotionally, you're out of agreement, right? The emotional loss of this is that underneath the yes, yes is happening underneath, but it's repressed. And women who are married to a nice guy sense that anger and it scares them, even though it's not being expressed. Additionally, because the wife actually wants the husband to disagree, she's actually pressing for disagreement. The nicer the guy is, the more she tests it. The nicer he is, the harsher she becomes. And so he doesn't understand. I feel like I'm doing everything I can to please her, and yet she is more annoyed and more irritated. I feel like I'm doing what she says she wants, and yet she's annoyed and unhappy with me. And I don't understand. Why can't I get this right? Well, if you're a nice guy or you've experienced this, what you need to get is you're either not hearing what she really wants, or she's not articulating it in a way her behavior indicates that she wants something different from you. She wants you to disagree. She wants to explain why you disagree. She wants you to hear her point of view and express your point of view without trying to fix the problem, right? Nice guys are dedicated to fixing the problem. They try to fix the problem by being nice. She doesn't want the problem fixed, all right? She's fine with disagreement. She's fine with you not seeing things the way she does. What she's not fine with is you not really seeing what she wants. What she's not okay with is not really expressing what you want. That's the problem with nice guy syndrome. And the answer is to all of these strategies is going to be very similar. So I'm going to spare you the answer for now. When we get to the end of the list, we'll talk about it some more. Let's move on to toxic masculinity. So a lot of toxic masculinity guys, a lot of guys who express themselves, who are overcompensators, who are super butch, who are my way or the highway. And if you don't like it, then you can lump it. A lot of those guys are, and I've been that guy too. I've been all these guys, by the way. Sometimes they tried nice guy syndrome and it just pissed the hell out of them. And so they just they started overcompensating by trying to control every situation. And they wanted a sense of power in some way, shape, or form. They want to feel like they're in charge, even though they can't truly be in charge. In a relationship, no one person can truly be in charge. They can be in charge in different moments when the ecology is best suited for their strength to drive them to be in charge, and the same is true for the other partner. This might start to express as it's often driven by a sense of insecurity. All of these are driven by a sense of insecurity. The insecurity of the nice guy syndrome is if I express who I truly am, my true feelings, she'll reject me. And so I have to show through my behavior because men are bad. It's a view of men keep women down, when men are not inclusive, men think they're better than, and so the reaction is to demonstrate, no, I'm willing to work with you. I'm willing even to be in service to you. It's an overemphasis of service. The toxic masculinity guy is an overemphasis of protection. Look, I am this guy because I can protect you. I am this. It's like a throwback to the 1920s. You know, it's a dangerous world, babe, and I got you. And actually, there may be times where that attitude is. By the way, all of these behaviors, there's times when they are even appropriate. It's when we do them all the time that they're not. So, toxic masculinity is men are stronger than women. Well. That's true in a context, and there are contexts where women are stronger than men. Men cannot bear children. In fact, men have a lower pain threshold than women. Women are stronger in, let's I'll spare you that list. We'll do that in another episode. The truth is that toxic masculinity is based on I feel inadequate, so I'm better than. All right, that takes us to well, actually, I want you to know there are things that are attractive to women about nice guys. What's attractive about nice guys is their willingness to serve. What's attractive about toxic masculinity is women really do want to be protected at times. There's definitely, when my wife and I are in a sketchy neighborhood, right? She's got very specific instructions on what to do if we're approached by someone threatening. It is, you go for help while I deal with this. Do not stay here and be a liability in my fight, right? She understands completely that that's something I'm better suited to, but that attitude does not apply to every section of our life. That is an attitude, that is a situation where what's being called toxic masculinity is appropriate and warranted. The problem is when we take it out of the survival context now and apply it in other areas of our lives, it's no longer appropriate or warranted. All right, the avoidant overachiever, the person who is always accomplishing. I mixed this up when I first introduced it with the stoic provider a little. Really, the avoidant achiever is looking to develop themselves. That's probably the best way to put it. They feel like in their relationship, they're not appreciated, and they feel like they're not getting what they need out of it. And so they take it to another venue. They take it to work. They take it to golf. They take it to karate. They take it to bird watching. They take it, but they are these are intellectuals. They're developing their intellect. They're overachieving. It might be even billionaires might be avoidant overachievers, where they're just accomplishing, accomplishing, accomplishing. Even though they've hit a certain level of wealth, they feel like they need to reach for even more. And so much so that they're not engaged in the emotional discomfort of the relationship, right? Because the relationship is about, to some extent, there's disharmony that happens in relationship. The power of relationship is bringing harmony out of disharmony, bringing agreement out of difference. But for most of us, the relationship is turned into a place of conflict. And so the avoidant overachiever they feel inadequate to the conflict in the relationship. And so they just achieve in another area of their life. They may also be providing through that overachievement. Provision may be a form of it, but they're joyful about it. It's a joyful experience for them. The stoic provider. Well, by the way, the avoidant overachiever, the strength of this is, the truth is, we all want to grow and develop as individuals. We want to expand as individuals. The purpose of relationship is the expansion of the individual through the relationship. And the purpose of the expansion of the individual is the growth of the relationship. They're interdependent, but the avoidant overachiever has checked out of the relationship and stuck to their own development. And it's not unusual to find two avoidant achievers married to each other by agreement. They don't discuss the relationship. They achieve, achieve, achieve. The kids are launched into the world, and they ask themselves, why are we married? We've done our job. Let's keep achieving, and we'll find someone new to play with, right? And they're pretty willing to do it. Stoic provider. This is the guy who is working his ass off all the time. This is the guy who's saying, no matter how much I earn, we never have enough. This is the guy who's always looking for a promotion. This is the guy who is always looking for a better car. He's always looking to provide a better house. He's always looking to give them better clothes. It isn't necessarily about becoming a millionaire or a billionaire for this guy. It's about always trying to make it better for his family. And the problem is that the more he makes it better, the more he has to provide, right? This is the danger of becoming the stoic provider. He's not emotionally satisfied with his family, but his value of family is such that he keeps providing, providing, providing. He doesn't know how to please his wife like the nice guy tries to. He doesn't know how to. He doesn't want to dominate his wife like the toxic masculinity guy. He doesn't want to be an avoidant achiever, but he's really, through provision, he's trying to find a way in. And she loves the provision, but feels that emotional connection is missing. She craves emotional connection, but he's so busy providing that she's not getting it. And she'll say to him, you're never home. What's going on? Why aren't you here? And he'll say, babe, don't you like this house? Babe, We needed 3 cars. The kids are teenagers now. We need 3 cars. I'm doing my best to provide here. How am I gonna be here? And if they have a fight, and they might have some good ones, it's gonna be, I'm doing everything I can and you don't appreciate me. And it's gonna be, me and the kids are here. Where are you? It's gonna be that kind of fight. And honestly, there are times when we all need to be stoic providers. The strength of the stoic provider is they're absolutely dedicated to the physical, material well-being of their family. But then their weakness is that they don't get it, that the family was okay when they had a regular car. The family was okay when they had a regular house. The family was okay when they had regular clothes. He doesn't need to keep reaching and reaching and providing more and more and more. At that point, it was time to make sure that he was connected. It's like, all right, I got a roof over our head. I've got the equipment that we need to function. Now I need to make sure that the ecology of our family, I need to follow my bride on this and make sure the ecology of my family is okay before I start continuing to grow the level of provision. And what happens with this guy is he's always spending a little more than he's earning. So he feels like he has to earn more. And every time he gets a raise, he spends a little more because he thinks the answer to her complaint is to give her something more. So he's always a little behind financially. And because he's always a little behind financially, this goes on. It's a self-perpetuating pattern. All right, the passive-aggressive partner. Passive-aggressive partner, this could show up in a lot of well, it could show up in nice guy syndrome to some extent. Passive-aggressive, by definition, is when you only express hostility or anger or fear through unconscious action, or sometimes it's subconscious. You're not sitting there thinking, I'm gonna get her. You're not thinking that consciously. Consciously, you're thinking, you're just actually, the passive aggressive people tend to be reactive. We can all be like this, where we all catch ourselves doing little things that other people perceive as hostile. We didn't intend it as hostile, but something about it, maybe the unconscious feeling behind it was hostile. Passive aggressive people almost never express their unhappiness consciously. It comes out sideways. Consciously, they may not be yes men. They may not be nice guys. All right. They might just be going through their lives, but they're not complaining. They're not, they're complaining in passive ways. Their wife says something like, I'm going on a trip next week for work. And he says, oh, that's okay. You always do that. Right. So the that's okay part, there's nothing in that, but you always do that. That's like a little dig. And she might say, what do you mean by that? And he'll say, well, for your work, you need to take a lot of trips. He won't even recognize it as a dig, just rationalize it. Passive aggressive behavior can come out in a lot of ways. And if this is something you think you might be doing, right? There are a lot of passive aggressive people who acknowledge it. Look at the ways that your wife is challenging what you're saying and how you feel you have to defend it. Defend it by rationalizing it, right? The passive aggressive, the nice guy, when challenged with, what do you mean by that, would say, I'm not sure what I meant. What did you think it sounded like? Or something like that. The nice guy would use a talk therapy approach to exploring it. The toxic masculinity guy would just say, I didn't mean anything about it. It's just the truth. You're gone a lot and you shouldn't be. You should be leaving this to me. The avoidant overachiever might just go, I didn't mean anything by it. I got to go to work now. The stoic provider would say, oh, yeah, I didn't mean anything by that. When you come back, let's go out to a nice restaurant. All right. And now let's go to what the defensive reactor might say, or the defensive reactor is kind of the flip side of the passive aggressive. The defensive reactor, when saying, his wife says, hey, I'm going on a trip next week for work. And he says, oh, that's okay. You always do that. And she says, what do you mean by that? Instead of saying, I don't mean anything by it, you're always on trips, he would say, you're always going on trips. You're never here for me. It's all about you. When are you going to show up for me in this family? The defensive reactor would be aggressive, but not in a toxic masculinity way. The toxic masculinity reaction is, I'm the man and I should be managing this. It's more defensive, defending with anger and blame, right? Those are the characteristics of the defensive reactor. Now, this is very often someone who feels very inadequate and feels that they're responsible at heart. The reason why she's taking a lot of trips is there must be something wrong with me, but I can't look at that. So instead, I'm going to blame her because it's obviously that she doesn't want to be with me, that she doesn't care about me, she doesn't care about us. Da, da, da. She, in this case, by the way, she might be more of a stoic provider or an avoidant overachiever, and he's defensively reacting. I mean, women have their own uh, inappropriate behavioral reactions to the current shift in male and female roles as well. Next episode, stay tuned if you want to learn about it. But here we are talking about the defensive reactor. This is someone who's very entrenched, very defended. And to give you an idea of what might be driving some of this stuff, defensive reactors usually, shame is a big piece of this in all instances. The nice guy may be emotionally shut down because of a sense of shame, something he's done or something that's wrong with him. The avoidant overachiever, again, might have some shame and they're looking for gratification through achievement. The stoic provider, same idea. The stoic provider is like, it's like, I'm working on the chain gang. I earned this prison term. The passive aggressive partner doesn't want to appear to be nice or hostile and isn't expressing these feelings directly because there's some shame around them. And the defensive reactor is hugely shameful. The shame drives this overreaction. In fact, studies of men and shame indicate that men have two reactions. One is to be very angry, and the other is to be very shut down. And so if I were going to categorize these, nice guy syndrome tends to be shut down. Toxic masculinity tends to be more very angry. Avoidant achiever um, is more, well, it could be shut down. It could be angry. It's hard to say because they're avoidant. But I'm going to go with shut down. Stoic provider, definitely shut down. Passive aggressive, definitely shut down. Defensive reactor, very expressive and angry. And the reason why there's less of this in adaptive behavior, less of the angry expression, the direct anger expression, is because the thing that we're pushing against is the judgment that as men, for thousands of years, we have kept women down by being angry and oppressive and reactive. And that's what's perceived as toxic. It is that anger and blame that is so toxic to relationships. Not that it's wrong to be angry. Blame doesn't work for anyone. It's not wrong to be angry. It's how we express it that is perceived as part of misogyny, which is the hatred of women, right? And so the reason why 4 out of 6 adaptations tend to be about repressed emotion or unexpressed emotion or indirectly expressed emotion is because the reaction is, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm trying my best not to be that guy. And the reason why I'm trying not to be not my best not to be that guy and failing is at heart, we are that guy. Aha, right? At heart, we are that guy. The roots of toxic masculinity, of misogyny, of a male-dominated society are in all of us. All right. And the roots are in our strengths. But the first thing we need to do is acknowledge the beliefs that we inherited from our parents, our dads in particular, and grandparents, and that are prevalent in the culture. The institutions support it. So we're almost fighting ourselves by not wanting to acknowledge that it's present. And second, once we acknowledge that it's present, we need to separate that stuff from our actual strengths, innate strengths as men, so that we can express our innate strengths as men in a way that's healthy and still honors women, our wives, as equals and partners who have strengths of their own and have the right to lead in certain areas of life. Breaking free, reclaiming your strength, it's all about seeing the big picture and how it's living inside of you. It's all about recognizing where you're showing up as these guys and where you're not and why. If you don't shift, you risk losing your marriage. But even worse, you have lost your sense of self. When we do not express our innate strengths in a way that's healthy for others, it's not healthy for us. Screw the marriage, screw the family, screw the kids. If you've got any of this showing up, and we all do, have lost your sense of self. It's about rediscovering our sense of self, rediscovering our sense of purpose. It's about seeing how does our sense of purpose and our strengths, our innate strengths as men, as human beings, as unique creations, how do they fit in the world today as it's being expressed? And how can we best find personal fulfillment while uplifting everyone around us. And by the way, the balance here is uplifting everyone around us while we experience personal fulfillment, right? Each one of these syndromes that I've talked about has some imbalance in that way. Nice guy syndrome, uplifting her at the expense of myself. Toxic masculinity, uplifting myself at the expense of her. Avoidant overachiever, uplifting myself at the expense of everyone. Stoic provider, suffering for the sake of provision for them. I put myself down for the sake of them. Passive aggressive partner. I act like I'm uplifting them, but really I'm thinking of myself first. Defensive reactor, all about me, baby. It's finding balance between our desire to care for, uplift, protect, provide, serve, lead those around us through our own strengths, our own unique strengths that we've inherited from our families, from our genetic background, from being men. It's about how do we apply that in a way that lifts people up and develops and grows us at the same time. A healthy man has all of these qualities in them and balances out the negatives with the positives. If you want to learn more about this, we are looking at, like, there's some groups forming, men's groups forming. Reach out to me if you're interested in one of the men's groups, and I'll hook you up. There's a no risk offer that we make around this. It's a beta group. We're just starting them. And so the cost is low, the value super high, and there's a money back guarantee. Reach out to me, rich@richinrelationship.com. Ping me on this podcast or video blog, however you feel comfortable. It's time to rediscover your sense of purpose, rebalance yourself, and express yourself in a way that's personally fulfilling and uplifts the people in your lives. In the meantime, have an awesome today and an excellent tomorrow.